Welcome back to the Press Club. Before the break, we were talking about the fact that the SLP, the UWP rather, seems to be pulling together following much criticism of division or suggestions of division within the party. And you have a situation where the SLP, on the eve of celebrating its anniversary and coming off the last Market Steps meeting where it was celebrating its successes, you have certain members of the party coming out in public and criticizing the party, suggesting that they need to use the anniversary celebration to do some introspection on the way it treats its members. We have people like Ferguson John, Damian Greaves, Timothy Manga coming out in the media this week. Fair assessments?
Did you hear Ferguson John?
No, I didn't hear Ferguson John. But I heard about Ferguson John.
It is, I was listening to you there, and it all boils down to what we in the media we consider to be the stories of the day. The story this weekend is the SLP's 65th anniversary conference. In the lead up to the UWP's 39th annual conference 3 weeks ago, the whole emphasis was on the division and whether the political leader would have gone to the table and smoked the peace pipe with the dissidents within the UWP. So that was the script that was leading up to the UWP's convention. The UWP as a party would have tried to find out what can it do to steal the thunder from the SLP leading up to its convention. So a series of things started to happen. We started to see the UWP decided that it would have a series of press conferences, 7 press conferences in the 7 days leading up to the SLP conference, so that every single day they would have access to the media to beat on to the SLP and the government.
Not unlike what has been done by the SLP in the past either. Not unlike what's been done by the SLP.
No, I'm not saying I'm telling you what's in sequence, what has been happening. The SLP, the emphasis leading to the, what I'm talking about is what we in the press decide, not in unity, not as a result of some meeting, but collectively in terms of what we decide is the emphasis, is what is. And I'm saying that the emphasis for the press leading to the UWP convention was the division and whether the convention would have healed or widened the division. Leading to the SLP's convention, I'm saying the UWP, the least it can do as a party is see how best it can steal the thunder. So in that situation, it decides, like you're saying, to do some of what the SLP normally would have done, which is to steal the thunder in the press for the week. And what's the best way to do that? By calling a press conference every day. We also have the situation of the emphasis being on how the Labour Party treats its former MPs. The stories that are coming out now are stories that are known from the day after the last general election. Mr. Mangal lost against Mr. Guy Joseph, and ever since then, I'm not sure I have heard him present himself as somebody who is interested in continuing the fight against Mr. Joseph, in the following 5 years, meaning from then to the next election.
Yeah, but according to the interview that he did with Choice TV, he was not approached until recently.
Yes, if I'm interested in doing what I think I can do for my party, I will go to my party and say, listen, I will do it. I will not say I can do it. Call me. If you don't call me, well, you don't want me. It depends on how you decide to approach it. In the case of Mr. Dr.
Long? You're talking about Dr. Long?
No.
Damian Greaves?
Damian Greaves. Interesting story. He contested Denry South for the Labour Party, won. When the next election came, for some reason known best to him, He moved from Dennery South, went to Dennery North, lost. Thereafter, pursued an illustrious academic career at St. George's University in Grenada, and was therefore, for all intents and purposes, off the grid, unavailable, could not have been at home engaging in politics. I assume he has now completed his academic stint and may be interested in running again. And I don't know where the comment came from, but from what I've read and what I've heard, interpretations from his fellow colleagues, I'll not say former fellow colleagues, so his fellow SLP colleagues, are that it sounds more like sour grapes than sweet wine.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a matter of interpretation.
And I'll go to the question on, I think that is where we have to be careful sometimes and respect the humanity in people. Ferguson John is the vice chairman, used to be the vice chairman of the St. Lucia Labour Party. He fell ill. He's a diabetic and he is advanced in his illness and voluntarily stepped back and off the political grid. It is unfair to Stanley Felix, to
Ferguson John.
Ferguson John. It is unfair to Ferguson John for someone who wants to make a case against the Labour Party to point to him and say that he is sick and the Labour Party has never even gone to see him. That someone would have to prove to me. And that is a low blow. Because there is no way that Ferguson John could be sick and nobody in the SLP would remember and not care to go and see him. So I think that when this is all part and parcel of the effort to make Kenny Anthony appear to be impersonal, don't have time, the party has lack of affection. This is the interpretation of one clearly, admittedly sour grape politician. But that gets a whole page. It gets calls, it gets emphasized, and it succeeds in encouraging people to remove focus from whether the SLP has delivered in the last 4 years any of what it promised in its manifesto, whether the SLP going into its last convention before the next election is a party that can say to St. Lucians, keep us there, or whether it is a party after 4 years in its third term.
But it gives rise to a very important point that we've raised on the show a number of times before. How realistic an expectation is it that, considering the size of the job that any government is confronted with when coming into office, to deal with those issues as significant as they are within 4 years?
Well, again...
You know, and the question that Damien brings up, should a Prime Minister be allowed, 2 successive terms? Or should limits be placed, on them?
Well, let's look at how we deal with realities. When this administration took office early in 2012, in his first public statement, the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance said that his party had underestimated the state of the economy and predicted that things would necessarily have gotten worse before they started to get better, but pledged that eventually the gaps will be closed, and it is going to take a long struggle, but we will get there. In May of this year, when he presented his budget, he did make the prediction that listen, St. Lucia is not yet out of the woods, but we're turning the corner. We're moving from the red into the black, which is the most important yardstick when we're looking at economic performance. Is your economy performing in the red or in the black? We were in the red for 2 or 3 consecutive years, and in the 4th year, as he predicted, through facts and figures in May, the economy is heading for a 1.6% growth. The IMF comes out and confirms that. But then the development banker in the leader of the opposition says, no, the IMF is wrong. The Minister of Finance is wrong, because they're saying these things based on predictions that tourism is going to get better. But as a former Minister of Tourism, I could tell you it's going to get worse. So that 1.6 is not going to happen. So when we boil down the discussion to who you believe, whether you believe Kenny Anthony or you believe Alan Shastney, it removes consideration of the facts.
Yeah, but I get a sense that the majority of people don't give a damn either way, whether they believe Kenny Anthony or Alan Shastney. The fact is they're not feeling it on the ground.
And that is where the Voice editorial last Saturday, not this Saturday, last Saturday, the Voice editorial called on it acknowledged. It said, listen, we normally beat the government on the head for economic performance, and we as a newspaper have editorially said to the government and the ruling party, we cannot go into an election with the economy as it was. So they want to acknowledge, but in 2 paragraphs before the end, the Voice says, well, okay, just the point you're making there, the 1.6 is good, hip hip hooray, but until such time as St. Lucians can feel that in their pockets, it's not going to matter. However, we do acknowledge that it is going to be very difficult to make 1.6% be felt in every St. Lucian's pocket. So that says to me, it reminds me that people need to be told that one cannot measure economic success strictly on the basis of how it is reflected in your pocket, because a lot of the people in whose pockets are getting longer, the monies in those pockets, making those pockets heavier, are not necessarily generated by natural economic performance. So that how an economy operates and the basis on which economic performance is judged, today a number of countries, particularly in China, several of the states in China, but a number of countries and economies around the world today are positing that GDP, gross domestic product, is no longer a sure yardstick
or gauge,
to gauge how a country is doing, because what you're dealing there is with figures, and there have to be other yardsticks that can really point to people, you know, rather than just figures. For example, John Peters had a very interesting article in today's Voice, in which he is suggesting that maybe the Caribbean missed the boat at COP. I don't think so, because COP goes all the way. That's a conference of parties in Paris. That the Caribbean might have missed the boat to make a case to say, well, listen, considering that we were recently graduated by the United Nations out of the nations in the world that are considered poor, and therefore we no longer qualify for easy soft loans and assistance. He is saying that the 15 CARICOM countries could have used the Paris platform to say, hello, degraduate us, because climate change, the consequences of climate change in terms of the effects in Dominica, the effects here, the cost of addressing the consequences of climate change is so much that it degraduates us as well.
Yeah. And let's talk about that when we come back. We're due for a break. We can shift our focus to COP21 as we wrap up. This is the Press Club. We'll be right back.